Hello, my friends. His sound proved to be of great importance in the Extasium. The main part is still the central painting, the Gate of Ecstasy, which is also called the Gate of Light, and under fluorescent lighting, the Gate of Paradise. I tell you how I got here. When I graduated as an architect, which I tell you about later, I realized that the reality of architecture was far from what we can imagine, much less exhilarating. In order to pay my studies, I worked in about 30 agencies all over the built world, and I realized that. In addition, I had been warned that with a diploma it was harder to find work because architects were afraid that the young graduate would steal clients from them, which they may have done themselves. So, what I was expecting was unemployment. I then decided to set off on adventure, for away from this very mediocre and stuck-up France at that time. But had that changed? I was looking for a country with a future, without racism, and with a more open mind to exile there. I thought of Canada, where I had been before, and which I liked very much. But I was afraid of winter. I decided for Brazil, also for its architecture and music. I didn't know what I was going to do there. I didn't know anyone there, and I didn't speak the language. I counted on my lucky stars to guide me. Once again, fate intervened. A friend introduced me to two associates who were developing a new market of lithography and serigraphy and who were interested in me to develop this activity in Brazil. They were located at 8 Boulevard Magenta, just next to where I came to live much later. They entrusted me with a cardboard box full of works of artists in all genres. But above all, they were painters of the geometric currents, and the main one, Vasarely, whose balls in relief fascinated me. So I went on an adventure to Brazil, where I was helped by a couple of hippies that I had met in Paris when I wanted to sing in the musical Hair. I talk about it again. Fate again. In São Paulo, they introduced me to some friends who were gallery owners and who bought some works. And I managed to organize exhibitions in different cities under the aegis of the Alliance Française. I only half like it because I don't have the commercial fiber. I had made a Franco-Brazilian friend who was a great painter, Eduardo Delon. He encouraged me to take up painting so that I could play with colors, telling me that my knowledge of architectural drawing would allow me to create geometric works without difficulty. I was tempted, but what decided me was the owner of the A Ponte Gallery in São Paulo. In a semi where we mix French, English, and Portuguese, he told me that rich Brazilians wanted paintings rather than works reproduced on paper. But I could not import for two reasons. I didn't have any acquaintances who could trust me with the paintings, and above all, the Brazilian customs had such high taxes that it became impossible to import them. He asked me if I could not find a Brazilian painter capable of making paintings in this geometric spirit that was so successful. I jumped at the chase and told him that I intended to paint them myself, and we agreed to organize an exhibition a year later. I returned to Rio, where I went every week to rest from the fatigue, noise, and pollution of São Paulo. And I undertook my first painting with building paint. Already it was announcing, without my realizing it, the future relationship with music, since I had called him Gong. And another sign of destiny. I was living at that time in Copacabana, just below the famous statue of Chris the Redeemer, the Corcovado. Moreover, from the very first painting, I felt an artistic force that was going to push and support me. I was going back to Paris to make something to fill an exhibition, and I started to work. But instead of being satisfied with imitating Vasari, I was gradually moving away from him to develop my own personality. 10 years earlier, with my mathematics and technical baccalaureate in my pocket, I didn't want to enter the arithmetic engineering school for which I had prepared myself at the technical high school. As my future perspective was still to work with my father in this company, it was decided that I would do a 1-year internship in a factory in Germany. The idea was that I could master the technical language for possible future exchange between companies. The town hall of Coburg, which was twinned with Freudenstadt in the Black Forest, offered me a job in a large factory. But there was no more room in the design office, and I had to accept a job as an unskilled worker. I had to get up very early to join the company nested at the bottom of a green valley. On the first day, as soon as the foreman's head disappeared from the staircase leading to the workshop, the 10 or so workers stopped working. And later, I was gently yelled at by a colleague because I was working too fast, the result of my training at the SNECMA school. That say a lot about the so-called German efficiency. I didn't have to be told again. And later, as I would go to bed late and get up at 5:45, I would hide in toilets or nooks and crannies or to get some sleep. Freudenstadt was a pretty water city in which there were several dance halls where I was going to wreak havoc with the pretty spark guests. In one of them, where I was used to dancing, the gypsy musicians even nicknamed me Casanova, because every time I went there, I was accompanied by a different, beautiful person. I had understood the lesson Dominique had given me. After 2 months, I received a letter from my father that would change my future destiny once again. He blamed me for not continuing my studies. He had not done any. So I told him that I had to continue. I wanted to study architecture, which would take me away from his company for good. It is because I was far from him, so authoritarian, that I dared to tell him. His answer was quick, and he told me to go back to Paris to enter the school of Beaux. I was overjoyed. I said goodbye to Fifi, the last and only steady relationship I had, and got back on the train.